We've been talking about the question, who am I, since we started. Who am I is the central question to all spiritual traditions, as well as to all memoir writing. We're investigating the nature of our personal identity and the nature of our transpersonal identity. Who are we in terms of our small biography, and who are we in terms of the witness consciousness? Situation plus meaning equals story. Situation without meaning, without depth, without introspection, and without some kind of revelation is just reporting. Okay, that's just the facts. So that's the first mistake that many memoirists make, is thinking that if they just put down the facts of what happened, that's going to be compelling. It's not compelling. That turns into one of those, then this happened, then this happened, then this happened books that are, they're not engaging. There has to be a deeper sense of quest in your work, a deeper sense of something you're trying to attain or answer, uncover, reveal, and there need to be stakes behind this quest. A sense that the writer is, it's a matter in some way of life or death, that this writer make the discovery that the story is about. Okay? That creates a real sense of drama. Part of what writing does is brings us into contact with the truth of how dramatic, urgent, surprising, uncertain, sometimes scary life really is. We tend to move through our lives in a kind of a trance of it's all kind of ordinary and ho-hum and humdrum. What writing does is it shows you that actually you're living an extraordinary moment every second of every day if you're paying attention. If you see yourself as a soul on a journey of awakening, then where are you on that journey? What remains to be seen? What is driving you? Where does your suffering come from? Okay, soul, when you see your life as a process of awakening, everything, first of all, everything has significance. Everything matters. There's nothing that doesn't matter on a journey when you see it in a spiritual light. And it also gives you a sense of possibility. One of the great things about spiritual life is you realize that suffering has a redeeming quality to it. For me, that was the major turnaround. That was the major wake-up call. When I saw that suffering was actually potential for and fuel for waking up and changing and having compassion for other people, all of a sudden the thing that I never thought had any meaning, that I thought suffering was just this futile thing that was thrown at us as human beings, all of a sudden became fuel. All of a sudden it became interesting. I realized that if what you wanted to happen happens, that's terrific. Obviously you're happy. If it doesn't happen and you get thrown a curveball or disappointment, right, even better from a spiritual point of view, because it forces you to come up against your own limitations. It forces you to see the crack in everything. And as Leonard Cohen said, it's the crack that lets the light in. Unless we get that life is impermanent, unless we remember the fragility of things, we stop caring, we stop valuing, and we take temporary impermanent life as a given instead of a gift. Awareness is coming into that self that doesn't have a story. Okay? There's a part of ourselves that is not bound by our biography or by this little narrative that we've composed about who we are. Okay? That's what the witness is. The witness doesn't have a story. The witness is awareness and presence without being bound by any sort of the confines of our ideas about what it is, where it's going. All of those things that are so bad about physical life are not applicable to the witness consciousness. Even in the midst of real suffering, the self can awaken. That's the paradox. That's the paradox of living in a body that has pain, but not being just the body. Okay? Having a life and a biography and connections that are human and beautiful and wonderful, but not being just that biography. Okay? talking about in terms of spiritual memoir is kind of strengthening that self-awareness, capital S, and strengthening the witness consciousness so that we can go beyond our own stories and reimagine ourselves. It's extraordinary when you step back and you start asking yourself who you are, and you start peeling back the layers. You realize it's one illusion after another. It's one assumption or some conditioned idea, some social construction, some family construction. But it's not who you are. And you realize how arbitrary it is and that actually every life is a work of fiction. When you see it that way, everything loosens up. Everything loosens up. All of your hard and fast assumptions and things you think you know suddenly take on a more translucent quality. You realize they're not solid and they're only as fixed as we make them with our minds. I don't know how many of you have ever had a catastrophe in your life. Okay, raise your hand if you had a catastrophe. The amazing thing about a catastrophe is 1 minute you're one person with one idea about who you are, and the next minute it's gone. The next minute it's gone. You get the phone call from the oncology ward, or from the spouse who's leaving you, or whatever your problem is, and the idea of who you are is radically and permanently changed. Now, if that story were real, it would not be able to be cracked open that easily. That shows you how arbitrary story actually is. It wouldn't be so subject to the slightest change as personal biography actually is. You see what I'm saying? When you come up against a life and death situation, or come up against crisis, you're forced to say, who am I that isn't this crisis? Who am I that isn't just that person I thought I was? And when you realize that you are so much more than this biography, it's extremely strengthening. And you stop taking yourself quite so seriously. And you do that enough times, so step through the unknown enough times, and your whole sense of self is enlarged and put into question, and life gets a lot more exciting. You see that life really is about evolution. It's not just about getting to the next day. It's not about survival. It's about evolving beyond preconceptions about who you are, what you're capable of, what's happened to you, and where you're going. Okay, so it's all about opening awareness, opening your heart, and opening your sense of yourself to possibility beyond what you may have thought was possible for yourself. And there are parts of ourselves that we don't want to look at, understandably so. Those are precisely the places where your juice is. When you feel fear coming up in the writing process, you know you're going in the right direction. Okay, I think I told you, it's the opposite of evolution, natural evolution, where you avoid what's scary. You feel fear, it's a self-protective mechanism. In writing, it's just the opposite. When you feel fear, it's like, am I hot? Am I warm? I'm getting hotter, I'm getting hotter. That's what fear is like. When you take yourself to the edge of your own fear, and that's where your wisdom is. That's where the discovery is. And that's where the old story can start to fall away. Because you are willing to reimagine your life. You're willing to consider the possibility that some of the things you assume are true for yourself aren't true. And you may have to do it differently. Okay, so feel the urgency of your mortality when you're writing. Write like you're dying, because you are. Your work is a testament. If you don't put it down, nobody else will ever know these stories. No one else will never know what it was like to be you. And that's a precious thing. You have to know that your experience matters. It's deeply valuable. And to think that it's just mundane, banal, and everybody's got it, is to miss the whole point. It's like saying, babies are born every day instead of seeing the miracle of childbirth. That's what it's like. That's how many people think about their lives. It's, oh, well, you get up, you go to work, you come home, you live, you fuck, you die. I mean, there are all these cliches. And they miss this precious point of how sacred life actually is when we take the time to love it. Love it enough to pay deep attention to it. Describe it as vividly and as fearlessly as we can. So fearlessness, shamelessness, take the risk. Don't worry about hurting people's feelings. You can always change the work later. Say the unsayable thing. Okay, Dorothy Allison calls it the scary story. Tell the scary story. Nobody wants to hear the safe story. Nobody wants to hear the myth, the life myth. Tell the scary story. Say the things that you wouldn't say in polite company. And you have a chance of waking the reader up too. And that's what's really exciting. You get that when you take these risks, the reader takes them with you. You challenge the reader to look into his or her own experience, the way you're daring to look into your own.